Hey, hello, everybody. It is Corey Poirier back with an impromptu interview. It's not part of our Blue Talk series or Influencer Vault or anything else. This is just Emily is awesome, so let's do an interview today segment. So, Emily Harrison, so excited to bring you on to introduce you to. I mean, you know a lot of the people in my community and network anyway, but introduce you to the people that don't know you yet and reintroduce you to the people that do. So, Emily, I guess to kick things off, and we'll dive deeper into this, but can you tell us just a little bit about who Emily Harrison is?
I can. Right after I tell you thank you for the impromptu interview. It's good, guys, it's good to have friends in high places, is all I can say, because I'm super excited to share with you today something that I feel like is part of my masterpiece as a quantum thought leader. So how do I show up as a quantum thought leader if this is the first time we're hanging out? I am the founder director of the Akashic Academy, which is an online mystery school. So the area of expertise that I've cultivated over the past 5 years has been in something really magical known as the Akashic Records. You might also know this as the field. You might know this as universal mind, as God intelligence. There are a lot of different ways that I've seen this concept of how humans are growing their consciousness and learning to tap super consciousness coming into the vocabulary of society, because what I'm finding is that we're at a point in our collective timeline where we've turned on the skills to learn to tap this God mind. And so my area of expertise has been learning how do we shift our consciousness so that we can tap this level of intelligence. The Akashic Records holds every detail of our past, present, all possible futures. Not only does it hold an individual imprint, a personal imprint, but it also holds a collective imprint. So once we learn how to tap this, we can really begin to see the bigger constructs, whether it is collective storylines and paradigms that are playing out, or whether it's really understanding quantum mysteries and tapping higher level genius like Albert Einstein, Nikola Tesla, Steve Jobs. So it's been a really incredible journey, not only developing myself as a mystic, as this intelligence returns to our planet. I mean, a lot of times when you hear about quantum intelligence and meditating and learning to do the really high level stuff like bilocating and tapping universal consciousness, and you think about ancient mystics, we don't really have construct and connect how does this really apply in our modern day life, but we're starting to see this energy return and this wisdom come back. So it's been really fun for me to, as this quantum visionary, to start tapping into the field and start understanding all of these mystical skills, these quantum skills that are returning to people. Their psychic skills are coming back, their intuitive, skills, their ability to tap the field and get guidance, aha moments, we might call them. Like all of this expansion is happening here on the planet. And I'm one of the lucky ones who has the remembrance of tapping this intelligence from other lifetimes, from other points in this timeline. What happens is our consciousness turns on and we can learn to tap different dimensions. I also have a past in Hollywood. I haven't always been a super woo-woo. Well, actually I have been, but I've had other incarnations in this life as well. And so for 20 years, I was a Hollywood actress. And what I'm finding is that comes really alive in how I bring this quantum intelligence into existence for the planet, in just creating powerful story that inspires people. I've got to explore myself as an entrepreneur, figuring out, what does it look like to understand what our unique genius is, my unique genius is, and learn to build something that creates a legacy for the planet. So that's who I am in a nutshell, and what I've been learning, how I've been growing and exploring myself over the past 5 years, which is when my path crossed with you, my friend, because we're doing a lot of those same things in essence and energy, but they have their own unique manifestation and how they show up in our physical worlds.
Yeah, amazing. And there's a couple of directions I wanted to go from there to sort of unpack this stuff. But I'm also making a couple of notes as things pop into my head, because that's the way, as an interviewer, everybody's different, but I go with intuition. But yet at the same time, my mind is always working, even though I'm listening the whole time. And so if I think of something, I got to write it down because I don't want to miss that question. That's a follow up to something you said. And so, Emily, have you seen the preview for the new Mark Wahlberg movie? It came out in June, I feel like. No?
No, I missed it.
So I can't remember. I'm trying to remember the name. I guess I could Google it. But anyway, he has a new movie out, and this I think you have to watch it.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to get the name for you here while we're talking. But what's really no, that's not it. What's really wild about it is that it's basically what he doesn't realize that he has past lives, and then somebody wakes him up to the fact. Okay, it's called Infinite. Somebody wakes him up to the fact that he has past lives, and the premise. I mean, this is the words they say in the preview. So I think this is the premise. If you can only remember what happened in your past lives, you can figure out the future you that is possible. So it's like somebody, whoever it is, I can't remember because I only seen like a 2-minute preview, but somebody's trying to get him to remember he has this past life, or all these past lives. He's lived for over 1,000 years, they said. All these past lives, so that he can actually take that forward. And I don't know what he does with that. Like, I don't know if they want him to take over the world or if they want him to save the world. I don't know what the core reason that he's doing it. But I remember the scene, and it made me think it was like a Jason Bourne type thing, like a identity. At first, that's what I thought it was, because there was this guy that kept pointing a gun at him, and he was like turning he had one bullet, and he kept saying, is this yours, or why did you use this or something? And then Mark would say, I don't know what you're talking about, and then he'd shoot it. And he basically kept saying, I'm going to keep shooting until you acknowledge it's yours. And I don't know if he was trying to pull his past memory or if he actually believed he should know. But long story short is that eventually he touches it, Mark touches it, and then it shows a whole bunch of flashbacks. And so anyway, I'm really intrigued by the movie. That's why I'm bringing all this up. But it makes me think of you, because it's almost like he's going in his Akashic Records to find out his past, and that's going to dictate what his future can look like.
I love seeing evidence of the records showing up in Hollywood. A couple things to say about that. One, I love seeing evidence of the Akashic Records showing up in Hollywood, because I truly believe that storytellers and entrepreneurs those are the two genres that change our planet the most. When we talk about quantum thought leaders, a lot of times we think of, people who are doing TED Talks, who are doing Blue Talks, who are writing books. The storytelling and the entrepreneurs like you, my friend, that are creating the experience. Like, you carved out an incredible movement when you saw the need for woo-woos like me who weren't aligning with TEDx anymore to have an outlet, and you created an entire movement. That's an example of how an entrepreneur shows up and completely shifts the planet. Because when you think about the ripple effect of how much you personally, my friend, have opened up intelligence to filter out and ripple out to the planet, people with unique cultivated geniuses in areas that wouldn't have a platform. I love that. Wait, what is that actually behind you? What are those old things called? Old radio?
Gramophone.
It's so perfect for you. Such a great symbol for what you do and how you change the planet. Hollywood, the same thing is, we start to really imagine and envision, like, Hollywood drives our imagination so much. And so to see this being embraced and shared and explored on this level is really exciting. Get excited. There's going to be so much more of it.
Well, and I mean, not to stay on this for long, but because you mentioned Hollywood, and then I just seen the preview yesterday, I thought I need to mention it. I won't stick here at all for long because I want to go in a different direction, but it's also that Bradley Cooper movie that came out a couple of years ago, or a few years ago, Limitless. I feel like that was another step into that direction that we hadn't seen. And to your point, maybe what's happened, and just talking out loud, I hear a lot of people talk about how Hollywood keeps redoing the same movies over and over, or bringing back new movies or new TV shows. Maybe Hollywood's run out of that type of stuff, and now all of a sudden they have to start going into the spiritual world because they've covered everything else too much. So maybe it's a good thing. Like, maybe now they're going to start embracing, like, maybe we'll see movies all the time about synchronicity and stuff because they've run out of other material.
Yeah, this is a cool aha moment coming in, because in my Hollywood years, I also explored writing and learned a lot about the essence of writing and how stories work. There are three bases. You got man versus himself, man versus man, man versus himself, man versus nature, and then a million different incarnations of those different things. what we're seeing now is like man versus God. Man explores God. Man explores the superconscious. This is cool. I feel you on that one.
Awesome. So let's go in a different direction, but I just had to bring that up. I wanted to ask you about, as somebody who, and I've witnessed this firsthand, the growth that you've experienced. I mean, I know you're open to me saying this because we've talked about it in an interview not that long ago, but I mean, when we first started working together, and I'm going to say, even it was like it happened even in between when we were working together, not like before. It wasn't like when I first started working with you, it happened. It was like I watched it happen in real time. But you went from, I think, knowing what you wanted to do, knowing your purpose, but then hitting a wall and even struggling. And you can tell your story more than me, but because it's your story to tell, but struggling even financially.
Yeah.
To somebody who now is grown and is thriving and has had such rapid success. So what I'd love to know is, what's the secret? What are the secret that we need to know that you've discovered? Like, how did that all happen? And if you want to, you can talk a little bit about what it was like, because again, I know you hit a wall and there was a struggle that happened there as well.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because the what it looks like to be a modern day thought leader, in my opinion, is you go through the process of remembering who you are. That would be some very quantum woo-woo way to describe it. Or another way to describe it is you go through the trial and error in real life. And what's required of a really good quantum thought leader, of a world changer right now, I believe, is one, the sole agreement that we're going to wake up in real time. We're going to go through it in real time, and we're going to be required to be vulnerable and to share the miscreation and the course correction as we go. It happens very quickly, but it's not an instantaneous thing. And I went through this. I was very, very clear about what my mission was and was moving forward in that direction. And I went through a phase where it felt like the more clear I got and the more committed I got to that, the more shit would come up in my life and feel like it would pull the rug out from underneath me. And for me, an area where I really struggled was financially. Being in Hollywood, that's an interesting place. Like, I think of the Screen Actors Guild, so the millions of actors that are actually a part of the Screen Actors Guild, which means like you're a legit actor, you can actually get hired to go on set, right? Which you have to earn that before you can even like get to that level. Something like a very less than 1% actually make their living acting. And I hit this point in my acting career, but I can tell you, it doesn't look like going to a job and getting a regular paycheck. It looks like you make 20 grand for this job and you might not work again for 8 months. Mm-hmm. So my finances always looked like that accordion. I found, even since I was a little girl, and there was a pair of basketball shoes I wanted, I was able to manifest the money very, very quickly. Like within a weekend of babysitting jobs, all of a sudden I had the $50 for my Nike high tops. I'm like, damn, girl, you go. So I've noticed that I had this ability, but what I didn't have the ability to do at that point in my personal journey was to hold wealth, was to embody that frequency, to hold it in a sustained period of time. Now, the secret that I didn't know, because I had done a ton of work. I mean, I was 20 years self-studying the woo-woo before I realized, oh, this is me, actually. This is what I'm here to do on the planet. So like I said, there was a lot of internal work that happened between me, myself, and I, that I got, I was a sponge for this information. But what I began to realize was, you get to a point where you'll still plateau. I plateaued still, and I find this with humans, because here's the nature of how the quantum energy works. You get to a certain vibrational frequency where you want to break out of the old you and you want to break out of an old timeline, yet your mental constructs hold the old timeline, your cells hold the old timeline, your physical, everything around you holds the old timeline, like your stuff, your material stuff. Other people in your life have a vision of you a certain way, and it's all becomes very ingrained in who we are. So even when we do the work, if you find you resonate, I have done the work in my life and I have made strides in certain areas, but I can't, it feels like there's more and I can't find that level of breakthrough and that aha and that alignment that feels so blissful and effortless when we create, and you just know that you're in alignment. People are still looking for this. I also, just to be very vulnerable, once I figured this shit out, my finances, and I got that fixed, the next piece of where I was weak, which is in my intimate relationships, is coming up for examination and for the opportunity to embody the level of peace and grace and forgiveness and compassion and mastery and wisdom. Like, it's very easy for me to do this with y'all. But people in my personal life who still trigger me, it's much more difficult to embody that. It's learning to control our unwanted reactions that have become programmed within us. And so I found that these struggles come up because of what I described, the physical nature of how we haven't brought this wisdom into physicality yet. So my secret, Corey, was once I figured this out, I learned, okay, I've got to get outside of my current time-space reality. That means in consciousness woo-woo terms, and it means I got to unplug from my life, how I'm experiencing it. Bruce Lipton talks about this, about how difficult, and Joe Dispenza as well, how difficult it is to create new neural pathways in the old environment. If you happen to break through and create a few more, sustaining it then becomes the next problem, and this made sense to me. I also realized that who I really wanted to be was somebody who prioritized self-care, who dove into quantum mystic experiences where I could expand, where my imagination, like my soul, could be like, really? Is this really happening? I could have that visceral experience of such synchronicity, sometimes even interdimensional contact with extraterrestrials, contact with interdimensional beings. Like, all of this is coming back to life, coming back to possibility for us too. And I believe that like, I needed the next level of inspiration. I needed a Hollywood level, bam of inspiration in my life in order to have this embodied experience. So what I began to do was seek out what that looked like, and the information and revelation that dropped in for me was what the ancient mystics used to do. And that is, they would pilgrimage and they would travel into the places of the planet where ley lines existed, where there was heightened piezoelectricity, where the pristine connection to God mind, to your Akashic records exists. And they would work together. They would teach each other skills. They would download information. And there isn't really an experience like that in modern day time and space for what our current quantum ascended masters and mystics look like, which is what I talked about. It talks about knowing that you have a mission and embodying it and going through the stages of success and failure and course correction and sharing that with others. And so I recognized there was a very unique opportunity for me to show up and to create a masterpiece experience for people like me who were really on the cutting edge of woo.
Love it. Well, have you ever heard of T. Harv Eker's The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind?
No.
Okay.
But it sounds like something I would like to hear of. T.R. Becker, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind.
T. Harv Eker.
T. Harv, got it.
Yeah. And that the reason I asked about that is because one of the things the book talks about, and it feels like it's maybe the what would I say it? I'm going to say the non-woo way of saying, in terms of saying about our blueprint being set on spend versus save, or spend versus create, or spend versus invest. He talks about, like Harv Eker says, if I get a chance to know who you are and look at your bank account for 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks, if I know your pattern, and if nothing changes in the next 10 years, even if you win the lottery and win $10 million, I'll be able to tell you how much you'll have in your bank account in 10 years' time, and it'll be very similar to what you have in your bank account right now. But the only factor that changes that is his belief is we need to reset our money blueprint.
Yep, I love that. It's because in essence it's an energetic. It's a wealth energetic, right? And then you wanted to, I love that we're talking about it in the context of money. If we were going to talk about it again in the context of biological science, you would hear people like Bruce Lipton again talking about epigenetic coding and how the switches get flipped. It's all about the circuitry and understanding the magnificent potential of the human body and its quantum potential.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I only brought up the Harv Eker thing because it made me think when you said where you were at, it seems like that's where he was at. He said that he could, in his case, he could create, excuse me, he became a millionaire 3 times, I think it was, and he created it no time at all, like where most people would take their whole lives. He did it like nothing, but then he would either go bankrupt or spend it all.
Mm-hmm.
And he did that, I think it was 3 times, I might be wrong. But then once he reset his money blueprint,
yes,
he started creating and building wealth. And he ended up selling his training company years later. To my knowledge at the time, it was the biggest sale of a training company in history.
Wow, I love it. That's
but
cool.
Also keeping his wealth even before that and through all that, versus the guy who was, getting it but then spending it right away. And like I said, it's just that he had to make a shift, whatever that shift is, whether it's energetically or whatever it is. I like that comparison.
Well, the whatever it is why the Akashic Records are so badass, because what is it? Like, how do we figure out what that is?
Mm-hmm.
We go into the space of our Akashic Records where every detail of our soul's information is recorded from a neutral perspective. So it means not the bias that you have experiencing your life. And we can begin to see and understand these things. And an answer might look like you actually took on subconscious programs of how your parents spent money. And so what you're unconsciously doing, what you're unseeing about your energy field right now is that you're repeating that pattern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love it. Well, let me ask you this then, because I know one of the things that you've been working on recently is a retreat, and it's been from my conversation with you, and from hearing just from people in your network that have been working with you, it seems like it's life-changing. So can you tell us a little bit about this retreat that you put together?
This retreat truly is one of my creative masterpieces, one of my, blips of creative genius that I've plucked from the records. And again, it's a really unique experience that it's inspired actually, Corey, by someone that you connected me with. I'm inspired by a lot of things, but I read the book, The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield, and then I got to meet him because of your connection and again, what you've created. And this story, technically it was a fictional story, but when you read it, you begin to understand the mystic and intuitive draw we have to explore ourselves within these unique vortexes of the planet. And I wanted to create that experience in real life. I loved the book. I loved the movie. I thought, all right, what does it look like to take this to the next level? It looks like creating it in real life for quantum mystics who want to have an experience like this. Mount Shasta is a place that I've been drawn to very strongly. You feel the pull, the call of the mountain when she's ready for you. And it begins to be undeniable. And as I followed that call and began to go to the mountain and explore the mountain and understand really what the mountain can do, I recognized that creating an experience where I can pair this mystical story, which when you are in and part of a story, your vibrational frequency raises to a state of bliss where miracle consciousness is so easy to access. When you lay that on top of being in the vortex, the incredible piezoelectric energy that is Mount Shasta, directly connected and attached to the Earth's grids. So basically, any powerful thought you think there begins to actualize itself through the grids of planet Earth. It's really, really incredible how this happens. And I also wanted to bring in the level of expertise that's available through the Akashic Records, since people have such incredible, easy access to the records there. I wanted to craft an experience that's not only, it's got adventure, it's got fun, but there's also really deep mystical work that we do by going into the records and downloading the protocol for what one's genius is. And, I talked about my past in Hollywood. I didn't tell you about my other jobs. I arranged flowers growing up in high school and I was a lifeguard. Those were both really powerful jobs that I had too. But I've had a lot of really cool experiences in my life. I've been immersed in education and understanding the constructs of education and how education works, and especially adult education, and what like inspires adults. And there's a really cool word out there if y'all are all education or speaks. It's called differentiation, and it means that you bring a unique intelligence and experience to each student that you're working with. And so what's powerful about this experience is there's differentiation amongst what the vision is. If your vision is to create a book or to speak on stage or to create courses and services or to reinvent your relationship, I mean, there's so many different ways that we show up and to create. So by creating differentiation and weaving that into the experience, every person walks away with a very clear download. I mean, you actually go in and you pull it from the field of what it is you're here to do. You get to tap into the vibration of that vision. And what I think is the most brilliant thing about the event itself is we don't stop there. We also download the steps. And this is, I think, what's missing in a lot of the woo-woo, the crossover, the transition of taking this intelligence and actually figuring out what to do with it, is the action steps and what to do next. And when you call in that information, you know what questions to ask. You've raised your vibrational frequency. You've worked in the vortexes. You've purified your system. You can trust that the ideas that come into your mind that you write down on that piece of paper become like sacred scroll. Like this is your Akashic record that you get to take home with you. That's what just happens during the experience. I would have to say 90% of the experience happens afterwards in the unfolding. It happens when opportunity begins to open up for you magically. It happens, like for me, Harvard came into my field and became an opportunity after my first trip to Shasta. After I saw some things, energy that I needed to clear. I had some purification that I needed to do that I wasn't able to do in my current environment, my home environment. Because you know how you know? Because you keep getting tripped up on the same shit over and over again. That's what it looks like in your real life. So I had that. This allowed me to break through that. It allowed me to quintuple my business and break through that financial accordion because I understood the energetics behind it. It came from Hollywood, came from being that kid who got the money for the shoes instantly, but it was gone instantly too. I had to figure that out. And what I put together is a unique combination of the physical experience, the emotional intelligence, and the spiritual intelligence to fully embody what it is that we're here to do.
Wow. So I have a question on that note before I jump into, well, I want to continue down the same path, but I want to ask you a question on it. But do you still have a picture of the shoes? You need to share that picture of the shoes sometime whenever you share that story, the high tops you bought. You must have a picture of you wearing them. I just think that'd be so cool to see them.
Your telepathy's good, friend, because the picture, like the shoes, flashed into my head a couple times. I think I do know where there's a picture of me too, in action on the court. All arms and legs too, if I remember correctly.
All right. Well, I'm not expecting you to produce the picture now, but I'm just saying you may want to try to track down that picture because I think in the future, if I bring you on, I might say, Emily, I'm going to give you this possibility to share the screen. We need to see the photo. So what I want to ask you about with relation to with Shasta, first of all, for those that might not know, it's in California, correct? And
it's in Northern California on the California-Oregon border. It's also known as the root chakra of the planet, and it's been a place of pilgrimage for millennia. Also in Mount Shasta, for those who don't know the bigger story, perhaps you've heard of the time of Atlantis and Lemuria here on our planet. Inside of Mount Shasta, when I say inside, I mean an interdimensional city. There's an interdimensional city of light known as Telos, which are refugees from ancient Atlantis and Lemuria. So there's a lot of really unique mystical things that happen when we go into Shasta. It's also one of the places where there are the most alien ET sightings on the planet. And I don't go to Shasta anymore without having crazy, wicked experiences, I gotta say. Get ready. If you ever travel there with me, get ready.
Amazing. And it's only, I believe, like, I did a Google before our call today, but I think it's like 4.5, 5 hours from where you're at right now. Is that correct?
You know what? Door to door, when I pull up Shasta on my Google Maps, it's 3 hours and 33 minutes. Any numerology fans out there who are into the 333 vibration? It's the vibration of the Ascended Master. So roughly 3.5 hours from me here in Reno. Yeah.
So my question, just out of curiosity, and then I just have a couple more to finish everything out. But do you ever just kind of go on a trip to Shasta yourself then?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm thinking that's pretty close to something that's so epic. So I was just wondering if you only go when you're doing the retreats, or do you go whenever, just randomly?
No, I went a couple weeks ago for my own spiritual growth. It was an initiation into the Order of Melchizedek. And it was an organized initiation that I went through with my spiritual teachers and my brothers and sisters who came from all over the world to do that. And I also, Corey, I felt my guides telling me, because, I kind of like it bougie when I go. There's a special place I like to stay, which the guests who are coming to Shasta this year get to stay. But there's literally a hot tub with a skylight facing Mount Shasta where you can UFO watch. It's incredible. I guess I sort of had something similar this time now that I think about it. But my guides were like, Emily, you need to camp on the mountain. I'm like, oh, what? Yeah, by myself, camped on the mountain. Before I went, there was like a little fear that came up in me. But what was beautiful was, like, as I entered into the forest, like literally the signs crossing over into Shasta Trinity Forest, I didn't even think about being afraid. And I slept by myself on the mountain, out in the woods, 4 days. I had some really incredible experiences. That was just a couple weeks ago. And then in April, I went with the documentary film crew and the Mitchell Hedges Crystal Skull, which is one of the 13 planetary crystal skulls, which talk about crazy storylines and being inspired by the Celestine prophecy. This is like right out of Indiana Jones, guys. And Bill Holman and the Mitchell Hedges Crystal Skull, the physical skull, are going to be coming with us on this trip to Shasta. Each person that goes gets one-on-one time sitting with this, what Ancient Aliens has called the most mystical piece of technology on the planet.
Wow. So I know when we chatted last time, I had to even go out of my way to ask you about this crystal skull. So I love it. I don't know why it makes me think of Indiana Jones and they were chasing the crystal skull.
Yeah. Well, because Steven Spielberg is one of the visionaries who taps the field, like George Lucas, like James Cameron, like Mark Wahlberg. I wonder who the person working with who wrote that Mark Wahlberg movie.
I don't know, but
you got the Matrix. You got the Wachowski brothers. I'm sure they're going to want to friend me and like hang out with me now.
Of course, especially now that you just name dropped them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Butcher name dropped them too.
What's that?
Butcher name dropped them too.
Butcher name dropped them. Love it. So Emily, I guess what I also want to ask you about the retreat is who is it? Would you say is it built for? Like, so I mean, I'm thinking of somebody that's listening now and saying that could be for me, but they're still not 100% sure. Why not go to the source and ask you? I'm going to ask you two questions in one. Who would you say it's right for? And how is it different? Because we see a lot of retreats these days, a lot of opportunities to go on a retreat. So why should somebody look at this one differently than maybe the other ones that they're seeing around or getting invited to or what have you? I know it's two big questions in one, but I just thought I'd...
Well, no, I'm super happy you asked this because this is not an experience that is for everyone. And I say that because what happens afterwards, when I talked about that 90% of what happens afterwards, it's a big deal. And there's a lot of expansion that happens with it. And as we visionaries know, the challenge that we're required to face in our life meets that of the vision. And so this is for people who are really strong and ready to embrace and take responsibility on an epic level. This is for people who know that they're here to create legacy on the planet. Because what I'm finding is that, there's, you think of legacy and you think of like legacy dynasty families, right? Where it's like Kennedys, Rockefellers, although I don't really like to drop the Rockefeller name because they got a really bad rap for how they have been a part of the suppression and oppression of our financial freedom. But when you think of like these more dynasty families and you think of those who have legacy, those who can easily step up and create legacy, like think of the Trumps, you think of Ivanka, you think of just like how some people are naturally born into that. And we feel like powerful people are naturally born into that. Well, it doesn't look like that right now. Mm-hmm. What I find is that the powerful souls, the souls that have attained mastery and many times ascended mastery, which means your ass don't have to come back to Earth anymore if you don't want to, because you figured most of it out, but you've chosen to. And what this current path looks like is it looks like the waking up and remembrance in real time that we talked about. So there's a lot of that feeling of, oh, I'm just an everyman. I got to figure out how I become this big version of myself. I realize that's a part of my blueprint too. You guys, I spent 20 years in Hollywood, traveling the world, working with, top producers and directors and actors. And I was born in a town of about 3,500 people on the Mississippi River. And it was very difficult for people to break out of that space. Talk about geographical history, the Underground Railroads ran through there. So there was not only slavery and oppression, but there were also secret ways out. Energetically, quantumly, I found one of those. I was the story, am in another life, that story of the small town girl breaking out, quitting her life back on the river, back on the farm, and seeking her fame and fortune in Hollywood. So what I realized is like, that's my blueprint. I have the ability to access and to activate and transmit the energy it takes to move from one dimension to another because I've experienced it. And that's what our ascended masters are incarnating in these roles, in these storylines where we look like every men, every women, where we've had a lot of fucked up things happen to us that we have to face, and we have to face in real time, and we have to continue to work through because we thought we already worked through it and continue to do it again. And this requires a really unique space. So those who are brave enough to accept their mission in this way, and those who recognize that innovative practice is what's next. I love that you talked about we've worn out the old Hollywood storylines. We've also worn out the old techniques of expanding our consciousness. And some people would think this is some crazy shit. The people who understand that it's the crazy shit, it's the return of the innovative secret mystic knowledge that's going to take them to the next level. That this is right. That it's right for that person.
I love it. And just to let you know, because we were talking kind of like a sandwich to go full circle. We were talking about the Mark Wahlberg movie at the beginning. And so I was curious because you said, I wonder who wrote it. And it turns out it's based on a book called The Reincarnationist Papers.
What?
So, yeah. So now I'm curious about this book. It's a novel by D. Eric Malkrantz, I think. Malkrantz.
Cool.
And anyway, so I'm going to check out that book. But yeah, so I mean, it's to your point, this is a situation, I think, without reading his background, where it's somebody probably who is into past lives and who understands that, wrote this book or did a lot of research and wrote this book about it. And then the movie kind of tapped into that. What I always find funny, and you were in the Hollywood world, so you would see this more than me. But what I always find funny, because I just looked really quickly, and I noticed the name of the character in the book is Eric something, like Eric Masterson, let's say. And then the name of the character in the movie is Eric Macaulay. Like, I don't know why they do that. Like, why, if it was written in the book a certain way, why would you keep the first name but always change the last? Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, because who is the first name you said?
The writer, or you mean the person?
No, the original name of the character.
Well, I think it was Evan. I said Eric, but I think it was Evan something. Let's see here. So Evan Macaulay, I think, was the original name. And
So
the new one, his name is Evan something else. Evan M something. Like almost the same last name, but different.
yeah, so there is an intern in the mailroom that sits in CAA, William Morris, IC, all of those big agencies, that when the scripts come through and have the names in them, they have to plug the names into a Google search to see how many people in America, the world, and have that name. And there are algorithms that if the name isn't unique enough, there are certain things that they have to do so that they try to find names that are easy on the algorithms. How's that?
Wow. So
How?
I see why that's the case, because it was Evan Michaels was the original one,
Mhm.
and Evan McCully is the new one. And I would think Evan Michaels is a lot more popular, like you
Yeah.
just said, than Evan McCully.
It could also be, hang on, sorry, I just had just a slight wardrobe malfunction right there. Hang on one second. Speaking of Hollywood. It could also be that.
Wasn't there a Janet Jackson moment?
Yeah, that was a little Janet Jackson there for you guys. Just trying to get a couple more viewers on here before we wrap up, you know.
Okay.
Thank you, proud beg. It could also be, this is, you'll love this little Hollywood fun fact too. Mike, well, whoever the first name was, oh, dude, what'd you say the name was? It was a really common name, like Evan Michaels. Evan Michaels. Evan Michaels could have been the name of an ex-boyfriend of one of Mark's women along the way, or his wife, and he was like, the hell, we're changing that name. That happens too. Or the opposite. Mark wants to get a guy whose name is the new name, and he's like, we're going to get him.
I got you. I like it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for
now you know how it works.
taking us behind the Hollywood curtain. And so, very last question, Emily, but maybe the most important is for those that want to learn more about your upcoming retreat, or want to reach out to you to find out if they're a good fit for it, and or want to sign up for it. Is there a hub? Is there a place you'd send them? Would you send them to you? What would you do?
Yeah, well, the first thing is I just always invite everybody, come see me. Come knock on the high priestess's door. I love to really embrace people, and there's usually a soul recognition right off the bat that I feel at ease and other people feel at ease, and it's really cool to experience that. So not a lot of thought leaders, it's just they reach out to me directly or send me a private message, but I do. So that's the first thing I want to say, is just invite you to do that. If you want to go to our website, you can also learn about the event. You can learn about a little more about Bill. You can get free gifts, all kinds of great stuff. theakashicacademy.com. I'll go. Are you going to put that in, or I can go back and put it in later too?
I'm going to put it in, but
yeah, those are the easiest ways. One thing that I just wanted to say quickly as we're wrapping up, though, because I tend to be long-winded, and if you ask me 2 questions in one, sometimes I don't answer the second question, Corey. You did ask me about what makes this different. And what really makes this different is the actual opportunity to field trip. It's like, I've been to conferences before, I've been to retreats before, and I've been on adventures before. This is a combination of all 3 that really allows the spirit to play. We also have access to things that you don't have access to in the normal everyday world. We have access to the crystal skull. This is like winning the lottery. This thing is crazy. I believe that there are 4 of the 13 only that have known whereabouts here on the planet. If you check out any information, like Hewlett-Packard has studied this thing, and all of their scientists are like, yeah, we can't explain this, guys. They kind of keep that hush hush. But the opportunity to sit face to face with us, like, are you kidding me? There's also, Corey, did you know there's a secret pyramid in Mount Shasta?
I did not know that.
Yeah, because it's secret, and you can only get in if you know the secret knock. If it's by word of mouth only, and the stewards of the property, the very sacred property where this pyramid is, were my teachers the last time that I went to Shasta. I told you, when I stayed on the mountain by myself. And so because of the deep work that I've done, and just like the love and passion and commitment, and can't get enough of this work that I've done, people who work with me get to have that level of experience without going through the same 20 years, 25 years of the process. It's like the cycle gets shorter for the next person.
Amazing, Emily Harrison. Never enough time. You and I mean, I know we could continue this conversation for hours. I always have to be conscious of the time because I always allot myself an hour. But Emily, I'll call it a to be continued with your permission, because I know we could have continued to go for a while. And I did put the link inside the comments here. It allows me to put it in a couple of the places, but we're in like 8 places. So I'll go back and put it in all the other places after. But, of course, I would just recommend those watching who are saying, this is of interest to me, I want to know if this is for me, a good fit, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Reach out to Emily. She doesn't bite, and she's very accessible. Like, you're somebody that will reply to somebody. So I say, it's the thing, you don't know if it's right for you or not, then reach out to Emily and ask the question.
And if this isn't the right experience, follow the connection of what's drawing your soul into my field, because we'll discover it together, and I will leave you with the right next pieces that you need, regardless of if it's Mount Shasta or not. Yeah.
So like I say, Emily, always a pleasure. With your permission, I'll call it a to be continued.
Got it.
And I'll continue to wave the flag for all the great work you're doing. So thank you for being you.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you guys too.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you all. And I don't know when I'll be back again. So the next one will probably be like a flash mob type interview as well. So we'll just see when that takes place. I have no idea when that is. So see you next time, everybody.